Hello and welcome back to the Scaling Europe show. We have got an amazing show lined up. But before we get into it all, I just want to do a quick shout out to my sponsors. Of course, Checkout.com. We have a very special guest from Checkout joining us today and a brand new sponsor, Gather. Gather is an amazing company that helps startups find and save money through partnering up with leading organizations. Checkout.com is, of course, one of the leading tech companies to come out of Europe in the last decade. An amazing fintech, an amazing partner for the show. We've got Rory O'Neill, the CMO at Checkout.com, joining us shortly. Then we've got Taos Edmondson, who's a partner at DMG Ventures and one of the co-founders of OnStage. We've got their famous demo day next week. We also have Tom Pope, co-founder and CEO of Adfin, an index-backed company that is flying at the moment. And finally, we have Mark Fairless, who is the CEO at Clearbank. Amazing. Well, look, we've got Rory here, so let's welcome him into the stream. And Rory, you are live. How are you doing?
I'm really good, Seb. Thanks for having us this morning.
It is my absolute pleasure. It seems like Checkout.com is on an absolute tear at the moment. It has been announcement after announcement, product announcements, partnership announcements, traction. Can you talk about some of the biggest news that's kind of hit recently and is kind of demonstrating why Checkout is doing so well at the moment?
Yeah, look, Seb, it's obviously a very exciting time for us. We're fortunate enough to play in an incredibly dynamic and fast-moving market. And I think, look, Checkout is a digital payments provider, working with many of the largest brands, digital brands across the world. Everyone from ASOS through Vinted and Pinterest and, Get Your Guide, Temu, Klarna. And just yesterday we announced HelloFresh. So, merchants are buying into our proposition, and very simply, we exist to solve one of the core problems in the digital economy, which is how do you just increase payment acceptance rates as you go from the physical world to the digital world. And unfortunately, when you and I use our cards online, even though we buy exactly the same things with exactly the same merchants using the exact same cards, the acceptance rate can drop when you're online to around 80%, whereas when we're physically holding that card in a store, it can be 99.9%. So that is a big problem for merchants around the world that we're trying to solve, and our focus is on solving that with machine learning, AI, data science, and all the product innovation that we put together.
And it seems to be going tremendously well. Some of the things that you've reported recently is like 30% net revenue growth for this year. I think a whopping $300 billion is your total e-commerce payment volume that you're kind of expecting to see in 2025. These are like amazing numbers. Where are you seeing some of that growth come from?
Yeah, look, I think the growth is really around the world. I think, Checkout was born out of the UK. We're very proud to be a London headquartered fintech, Seb, and thank you for helping us tell our story. It's a really important thing for us. We've grown across Europe. We've grown across the Middle East, North Africa. We've got a great proposition in APAC. We help, Chinese merchants that are trying to reach consumers around the world as they sell their goods into those markets. And the US is a focus for us as well. We've grown, I think, 80% year over year in 2024 in the US. It's a significant part of our business. The brands that we're winning now are global and expecting to operate in all these markets around the world. And we expect the US to be a significant investment for us. And will probably be our largest region actually by the end of 2027. So look, the numbers are super important. The growth is super important. Obviously we take care of net revenue growth being, as you said, 30% year on year. We're thrilled to be, processing now by the end of the year, more than $300 billion of e-com revenue, GMV, so rather as we kind of work on it. And that's a testament to the amount of merchants that we're working with and the growth that we have.
That's amazing. Can we touch a bit more on the US? What's happened in the US? What did you get right that has enabled the US to almost kind of, take over as your biggest region by 2027?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think the core of what we're up to, the great thing about Checkout is that we're purely focused on that digital enterprise space at the minute from a payments perspective. And, what enterprises need is we've got robust AI and machine learning models that are really training and learning based on the whole of the network data to try and optimize and improve that acceptance rate when people buy cards online. So that's a great proposition for digital brands, around the world, but obviously particularly in the US where the scale of everything is just bigger. The US is the biggest payments market in the world. And we've got a great proposition for that market now, investing in various product capabilities to do so. So, we run 80 million optimizations a day. We run optimizations on 10 million transactions. The scale of the science, if you like, that we've put behind that transaction intelligence and making sure that acceptance rates are as high as they possibly can be is a really important thing. So that's kind of the first part. And then the second part, there's been some, changes to the way the US market has structured, from that sort of sense. We announced obviously last week, that, we've got a MAL-B license. It's quite a technical license from the state of Georgia, but essentially what it allows us to do is take more control over merchant acquiring in the US market. Which means that we can offer US merchants, even higher and even greater capabilities in terms of payments performance by just reducing the amount of complexities and intermediaries that are in that mix. So that's a big deal for us. And, once that's fully accepted and fully live, in 2026, then that will be, even adding to our existing proposition in the US market. So, again, US is a really big payments market. So there's some really great merchants over there. We've got a really existing proposition that we think is really, good, and we're growing fast there. And I think it's only going to get better with the innovation that we've put behind it.
And so that Georgia banking charter, it seemed like quite a game-changing new application that you've put in. It's going to unlock a lot of things for checkout. Is that going to take you in direct competition with Stripe? And is that who you're going after in the US?
Yeah, look, we've got great competitors across the world, Seb. This is a $3 trillion market that McKinsey forecasts is growing at 14% year on year. So you have great competitors everywhere around the world. And I think that, look, what we want to make sure we offer is we offer merchants a choice and alternative to every brand in every market that we compete with. And look, Stripe, Addy, and WorldPay, there's great brands in this space. And we think that, what is unique about checkout is that our focus entirely is in that digital space. Mm-hmm. So every single dollar, every single resource, every investment we make in checkout is behind solving that digital acceptance rate conundrum for the world's biggest digital brands. And over time, our focus and our strategy and our bet is that focus is really what delivers a better proposition to those digital markets. So yeah, look, it's a big market. There's lots of competition.
Yeah, I love it. And when you talk about solving that problem, how big a problem can that be for the customers that you are solving it for or you want to solve it for?
Yeah, I think, look, we've seen, many of our products, and take one of the products we announced last week that we've made some innovations to. It's a product called Flow. It's like, micro components that just, connect merchants' environments to the checkout network. When we work with merchants around the world on that particular product and the Flow product, we can see anything around a 7% uplift in acceptance rates. So, you think about that, Seb, right? If you can move an acceptance rate from 80 to 87 or from 85 to 92%, that can be hundreds of millions of dollars, for brands that are processing, billions of dollars a year online. So the size of this problem, we talk about a lot at checkout. We talk about chasing basis points. And exactly, if we can save 1 basis point or improve 1 basis point on the amount of volume that's conducted across our network, it can mean millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars to merchants around the world. And that's our inspiration, Seb. That's what inspires us every day.
No, yeah, when you put it in that 7 percentage points, it's a huge impact, right? And the bigger the partner, the bigger the merchant that you're dealing with, the more transformational that uplift can be. You talked about Flow Remember Me. I think, it's quite an interesting new product development that was announced last week. But it seems like Checkout is also making other bets in this world. What other product developments have there been maybe in the last year or so that have been particularly exciting?
Yeah, there's sort of almost 3 or 4 levels to it, Seb. As you're building a global payments network, one of the things you can do is expand the number of territories that you enter. So, we've 2 years ago we went into Japan and started processing alongside the incumbents there. Last year we've announced the addition of Canada, working on that too. Obviously we've talked about the US already. So there's a kind of there's a market rollout that you can kind of grow, and it's to enter a market, to get the regulations and the licenses behind it, and then build the rails and build the networks with partners like Visa and MasterCard is obviously a lot of investment, a lot of resource that goes into that. You can also add payment methods. So all the way around the world, consumers have great preference in what they choose to use to pay. Part of Flow Remember Me is using AI to put the right payment methods in front of the consumers as and when they need to use them, which is an optimization that can lead to increased conversions and more sales for our merchants, which is obviously super, super important. There's the AI optimizations that we build into the network. And this is just, it's always been at the core of payments, Seb, really. In a way, we've kind of gone from machine learning tables into the use of, AI and those sort of pieces. But there are machines that are learning how to process more and more transactions and get higher and higher acceptance rates all the time by changing data fields, changing the data packets that are involved, whether it's device identification, or even as simple as upper and lowercase data fields of a postcode. all of those little things to be optimized in order to make sure that, a bona fide consumer can buy for bona fide goods with a bona fide merchant, and the reduction of fraud that goes around that, and the et cetera, et cetera. So across all those levels, we're kind of, innovating in the system. We're also, investing in, issuing Visa and MasterCard now, so that we take complex payment flows in verticals like travel and fintech, and kind of help optimize where an awful lot of like redundancy and kind of like mitigations of cash. We're putting payment flows or cash flows into the payment network rather, with things like checkout business account. So actually, making sure that people can start to move money easier and put money to work a lot easier. And then there's the whole settlement question too. So, right the way around the world, there's too many merchants that are dependent on banking hours being, extended beyond the weekend so they can get their money and actually put it to work. And it's amazing that if you think about the amount that's processed across our network, and if we can put that money to work on behalf of our merchants a little sooner, then you can start talking about how payment flows will optimize even things like working capital. So there's an awful lot of ways that we kind of, innovating in the core of the digital payments network, Seb, and it's building up that network. It's building the intelligence of the network and making sure that, we share all of those optimizations and power of that network with all of the merchants that are on it.
And what are you thinking about the future of commerce more broadly? You've talked about AI, you've talked about automation, but what about agentic commerce? Is Checkout imagining a world which is, I guess like quite similar to the release of Flow Remember Me, but it's almost like your agent will know all your details, and maybe it doesn't even need to be a checkout merchant that you've used previously, or like you're on the checkout Flow Remember Me, but maybe agents will remember all of your details. They'll do all the checkout for you. Are you kind of trying to build or predict a world in which agentic commerce or AI commerce kind of comes in and takes over?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of hype and a lot of talk about agentic, so for sure. And there's many brighter brains than mine that are sort of spending time in this domain, in this sort of area. But look, I think a couple of fundamental things. I think that, agentic commerce, first of all, is agents buying on our behalf, right? Like it's agents buying on behalf of consumers. And there are a plethora of implications for merchants. Let's put to one side, and maybe we can come back to it, Seb, if you want, but put to one side, like how you market to an agent, right? Like the world of search is going to be transformed, right? Like your website is going to be transformed. Like people like me have cared about flow of websites and conversion rates on websites and, imagery on websites. And perhaps when an agent is buying on your behalf, they'll care less about the pictures and less about the web page structure. They'll care more about the data and the code that sits underneath it. So the agentic commerce is a huge topic for merchants to get involved in. Let alone how people discover those brands and get to know them. But when you think about the moment of payment, actually probably what's most important is the fundamental principle of trust and identity. Now, if an agent's buying on your behalf, who's really responsible for the transaction? Who's liable for the transaction? What happens when something goes wrong? How do you prevent bad actors from making agents that all of a sudden shop on behalf of Seb and all your listeners, and nobody knows how to get any of the money back if the flows are proven to be fraudulent? So that's the kind of like trust dynamic that is the first principle that we're going to have to crack in agentic commerce. So how do you put trust in the system? And if you think back, like when the world went from, physical buying to digital buying in the first wave of e-commerce, we spent hundreds of millions of dollars putting trust into that system and creating card not present rules with Visa, MasterCard, and all the schemes and all the partners in the ecosystem around it, so that actually there's as much trust in the system as there was when you physically put your card in a machine and enter your PIN code, for example. So I think, so trust is kind of the first paramount. And then the second thing I think that's super important is agentic commerce is going to be just another channel for merchants to reach consumers, right? Like just like digital commerce and e-commerce was just another channel to reach the same consumer. And that's how we're going to have to think about it, because effectively, omnichannel is going to get another channel. And I think that, as we think about this, for certainly enterprise merchants, it's not going to be one size fits all, Seb, right? Like, if you think about, again, going back to e-com, right? IKEA had a different e-commerce strategy to Chanel. eBay had a different e-commerce strategy to Amazon, right? They were all fundamentally different, and they were fundamentally built on the basis of what business strategy and business model those merchants actually had in order to reach their consumers. So the first question I think for the merchants that we serve and we work with is, what is that business model? What is that business strategy? Because there are very few merchants in the world, very few retailers in the world that are going to want to open up all their SKUs with no branding, no support, no service, no logistics, no layer to an LLM model, and then allow agents to buy like effectively from a blank warehouse, right? Like that's not a business model for many merchants that we work with. So, I think we're going to see the evolution of agentic commerce, driven by those pieces. But what we're working on now more than anything is making sure that the whole of the ecosystem, so our partnerships with Google, our partnerships with Visa, with MasterCard, the infrastructures that we're putting in place. So, the trusted agent protocol we announced with Visa yesterday, the AP2 network protocol that we announced with, Google 2 weeks ago. This is all putting trust into the system to create an ecosystem that merchants can then work with. But the most important thing for us is making sure that people take the time to listen to what a merchant's business model is and how you protect what a merchant's interests are in a world of an exciting new channel.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So I think we've got a long way to go to build the trust first before we can even start talking about really using this technology to work in a meaningful and safe way. Look, I'm conscious we're running out of time. One of the things I absolutely wanted to talk about was the $12 billion employee share buyback scheme. And this is like an absolutely amazing result for so many employees, I imagine, at checkout.com. Can you touch a bit on the rationale for why Checkout decided to do this?
Yeah, it's really simple. Guillaume, who's our CEO and founder, has a fundamental belief that the value that's created of an organization should be shared with its employees.
And was there always going to be an employee share buyback, or did you look at perhaps doing like a secondary sale like lots of other organizations have done?
Yeah, look, I think that the driver here is the employee value, right? Like what the whole point here said is that we allow employees to join in the value that they've helped create. And look, there's lots of debate around private versus public markets. And, I can tell you that, like, fortunate to be part of the executive team at Checkout, we don't talk about that an awful lot, right? Like we're very focused on, growing the business. What's the best product, the best proposition we can solve. I'm personally, tasked with how do we tell more people of the world the Checkout story and grow Checkout, help to grow Checkout with our commercial colleagues around the world. So that's what we spend all our time on. And I think that, it's great that employees are, have this a chance to kind of get, access to some of the value they've created, and it helps long-term motivation of employees. I think you're going to see it more and more often with, we're not the first privately held company that's remained private for a long time that's used, the levers of buybacks as a long-term motivation tool. I think you're going to see more of it. And I think that with private finance being more widely available in the last 5 to 10 years than it ever has been, I think this is going to be a trend that you're going to see more and more, fintechs, tech businesses, growing companies that use this tactic more often. But like the prime purpose here is how you cut employees into the value they help create.
No, that's amazing. And, I think from an outside perspective, it's like absolutely amazing to see that, European operators getting real cash in their hands and, being able to convert those shares into real money that can be quite life-changing often. How is Checkout.com thinking about the broader ecosystem at all? Everybody's saying the market is crazy hot right now. We're in the midst of potentially a bubble. Has that changed the way that Checkout is looking at the wider market when it comes to things like the IPO market or fundraising again? How's Checkout looking at the market right now?
I can tell you that we don't even think about it. Like
really?
The management team we don't even think about it. It's not even on the radar. We don't talk about it. We've got some great investors. Guillaume does obviously a great job with managing investors around the world and managing the company. We're focused on the operational execution of the business. And like, honestly, Seb, been around long enough to know now that if we take care of our core proposition, if we take care of winning new customers, winning new merchants and, growing the business, all those great conversations that are in the future, they take care of themselves, right? Yeah. I can honestly tell you it's not on the radar.
Amazing. Laser focused on building new products, delivering value, signing new clients. Amazing. Well, look, Rory, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm a huge fan. Thank you for your support on the Scaling Europe show, of course. But let's stay in touch.
Yeah, brilliant. Listen, look, I think you're doing an amazing job, Seb. I think it's an important, the world needs people to help companies like Checkout and many others in Europe tell their voice, right? Like the European techs need this platform. So really appreciate your work and thank you for your partnership.
No, love to hear it. Well, thanks, Rory.